Hello and welcome back to the Veterans Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Miguel Mata, and today my guest is someone that I've known for quite a while. His name is Will Ryan. Now, Will and I spent some time together when we were stationed in Grand Forks Air Force Base, North Dakota, back in the early 2000s. And he's someone that I would endearingly refer to as a space cadet, right? Heads in the clouds, right? Mine was always kind of wandering, that sort of stuff. But it was in good fun. A short time after, Will's journey would continue on to Spangalm, Germany. We would keep in brief contact with each other via social media, whatnot. But now, 15 or so years later, we're coming back together so he could be on my podcast. And as we're all about to learn, he's had a lot going on. He's got some ups, he's got some downs, he's got some transitional issues that he had to work through as he got out of the service. And, some of it will sound unique and different in his own story, but I'm sure a lot of it will sound very familiar. So, without further delay, here's William Ryan. Hello, welcome back to the Veterans Lounge podcast. It is I, your host, Miguel Mata, and today I have a very special guest. They're all special, but I have another special guest, a gentleman by the name of William Ryan. Say hello, William.
Hey, how's it going?
Now, is it William or is it Will?
My friends call me Will, so we'll just roll with that.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Will, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. I'm talking to you right now as if I don't know you, but that's not true. You and I have a little bit of history.
Yep. Got that time up at Grand Forks.
Yeah. Will and I spent some time together at Grand Forks. I knew little Willie Ryan when he was a tiny tot.
Tiny space cadet.
I used to call him Space Cadet because he spent a lot of time dreaming into the clouds. No, but I knew when he was a Jeep, right? Just enough experience. Type person, but he's since gone on to do big and better things, and he's been gracious enough to come onto the podcast to share a little bit about his story, which I'm always interested in hearing about veterans' stories. And you and I lost touch right around, I don't remember when did you leave Grand Forks? Before we get too carried away, I wanna backtrack just a little bit, and I want to ask you. I'm curious because you're an Air Force guy, just like I am.
Yep.
Tell me the story of what got Will Ryan to join the Air Force.
Oh, that was a no-brainer. My family's Air Force through and through. My grandfather was in a electronic security group back in the 50s and 60s. My grandmother was in until she got pregnant with my aunt. Back in the Air Force in the 50s, it was an automatic discharge. My aunt just retired as a chief after, I think, 40 years, near enough. Got a couple uncles that were in. My cousin was down at AFTEC down in Florida. Naturally, I just kind of jumped on and decided to go work on aircraft for a few years.
It was a family business then, right?
Yeah. We got business. 3 generations on it now. I wasn't going to be the one to get made fun of for going into another branch. So, but yeah, no, I did. Air Force was just kind of the go-to choice. I didn't want to go to school right away, right out of high school, which coming out of the high school I came from was kind of a shock for a lot of people because I graduated from Plano Senior High School in Texas, and Plano in general is very college driven. So to have somebody that wanted to go military, you really didn't get much in the way of like any kind of accolades or anything for it. Like I remember my senior year, map being up on the wall. Everybody's going to this school, that school, everything else. All the military guys, I was on that map. So I was like, whatever, I'm cool with it. I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to take a break. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to go in originally as meteorology. But when I went to MEPS, they had E&E, the electrical environmental, where you and I, know one another, and they had nuclear weapons and no interest in nukes. I was just like, no, I like E&E. Let's go E&E. Almost got a chance to go meteorology, but my recruiter said I was going to be leaving that morning. Not a chance. Nah, I was like, nope. I hung up the phone. I'm like, I'll just stick with E&E.
You want to hear a funny story about my my becoming E&E? Whenever I got the jobs laid out, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't want to be a mechanic. They said, well, we got this job called electrical environmental. They work on airplanes. I said, are they a mechanic? They're like, nah. They work on electronics and blah blah blah.
The one thing I learned,
it was fun though. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I learned with E&E, especially on T-tails, was sometimes you're a mechanic, sometimes you're more avionics because C5s were very mechanical, C17s are very computer driven.
Right. I used to joke. Look, our job was cool, and and it spanned a whole wide array of experiences and experiences and knowledge, right? Technical knowledge, and I used to joke, that we were too smart for our own good. Right. Yep. we could fit in so many boxes, but man, that's cool, dude. Yeah. E&E, that's where it was at.
Yep.
Now, in your experience, and this kind of segues or gets us back on track to what you started to share with us earlier. Your military experience spans quite a few years, but it wasn't all E&E. So no. I believe you said you left Grand Forks and then you went on to Spangdahlem. Why don't we pick it up there?
So I went to Spangdahlem. I was there for 2.5 years. I worked E&E as en route on T-tails, C-17, C-5s. But at en route, you're expected to be more of a crew chief. And it was during that time at Spangdahlem, I kind of realized I'm like, I'm really not cut out to be E&E. I had that kind of awakening, like I mentioned, the space cadet you knew at Grand Forks. I kind of picked up on what's good for me and what's not at Spangdahlem, because I enjoyed doing the crew chief work. I really didn't enjoy doing the E&E work.
Now, explain for anyone who might be listening, like, what's the big difference between E&E and crew chief?
So E&E is very specialized. It's you're working generators, you're working aircraft pressurization, you're working oxygen, you're working electrical issues, things like fire loops on the engines, you're working landing gear issues that tie in with wiring, generally end up working with other specialists. Crew chiefs, on the other hand, I actually have a crew chief friend of mine. They're jack of all trades, master of none. They're expected to know enough about each system to kind of be able to troubleshoot it on their own, like if they're on the road. Their job overall is more airframe. So they are in charge of the actual outside of the aircraft, the paneling. They do a lot of the inspections. You're replacing landing gear. You're replacing flight control surfaces. It's not a bad career field overall. I know with you and me, like, crew chiefs were generally seen as the dumb ones. There was a lot of crew chiefs though that were really, really good at their jobs though.
That's my experience too. Like, they did get a bad rap, the crew chiefs.
Yeah.
Crew chiefs, some of the smartest people I have ever met, some of the most intelligent people I have ever met were crew chiefs.
Yeah.
And some of the dumbest
people I ever met were crew chiefs.
some of the dumbest people. Like, the difference between a specialist and a bag of potatoes was the bag, right? Like, some of them were specialists. Some of them did our job.
There was a couple I'm kind of sitting here thinking, I was like, yeah, you're definitely putting a special in specialists. So
yeah. So anyway, all of that being said, like, you felt more comfortable. At least you learned that maybe you were more adept to be like, do crew chief tasks.
Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't necessarily the crew chief task. It was more just having that airframe knowledge in general. But I did enjoy doing the crew chief work more. And around the same time, this was 2010, the Air Force had a voluntary separation program going on where effectively you could quit. So I was kind of at a point where I was like, I was kind of over active duty. If I had it was one of those things where I was like, if I knew about the Guard when I joined, I would have gone to Guard instead. And I had no idea about the Guard when I joined. So I ended up doing voluntary separation. I got out August 2nd, and I swore into the Air National Guard on August 3rd. It was a typical traditional at first, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, so on and so forth. And then I got picked up for a temp technician job as E&E, where I was working full-time as a federal employee during the week. I was still in uniform. It's kind of complicated. It's called Title 32. I'm still in uniform, but I'm a WG or a GS. And then 1 weekend a month, I pretend I'm an NCO for a couple of days. So I did that for 3 months. And then the job opened up where it said production controller. And I thought this would be in MOC, which is Maintenance Operations Center. That's pretty much, looking back at it, MOC is kind of the color commentators of what's going on the flight line between maintenance and operations. They are the people that know what's going on. And a lot of the people that end up in there are crew chiefs. So I was like, all right, I'll go for production control. Let me put in an application. Worst I can say is no. And it turns out it was actually for that federal title shared a name with scheduling, with maintenance scheduling. And this is where actually the position was in maintenance scheduling. I did the interview, and I talked to the guy that was working back there at the time. He's like, come on back. He's like, you've got, years of experience on the aircraft already. You got more than most people that are interviewing for this or bring it in. He's like, I can teach you the scheduling stuff. Scheduling stuff's easy. He's like, I need somebody that's got actual experience. So I actually got picked up for it, and I started working at 2011, and I did that for 10 years. And I loved it. It was like scheduling in of itself wasn't that hard, but I got involved with a lot more stuff than scheduling specifically, because it was the Air National Guard, and we were a smaller unit. So they always, excuse me, we were always seen as kind of the miscellaneous section where we don't know who should do this. Let's give it to scheduling. So and I ended up getting involved in a lot of stuff that most schedulers normally don't get involved with. And it helped me out with being able to kind of expand my horizons in terms of what I was doing. I still like the mechanical work. I still liked working around aircraft, but I got a lot of experience doing something totally different at the same time.
That's interesting. That's really kind of cool. You kind of found your niche accidentally,
Yeah. Totally stumbled into it. Yeah, I totally stumbled into it. It was just on a whim. It was not, I don't want to say on a whim, but it was just something that had been kind of reviled while I was working on the flight line. Schedulers always took a knock from everybody else because all schedulers were ever seen as was assigning more work. And it turned into this like thing that like I excelled at, and it was great.
Production mock. Do you know you have a 180-day blah 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 on this?
Yep.
Did you stop?
There was plenty of times I'd sit there and say, "Hey, who's tracking your squibs?" and find out nobody had been tracking them for 6 months.
So you're doing this for 10 years.
Yep.
Right? You said you got into it in 2011.
Yep.
10 years later, that's this year, 2021.
Yep.
What happened? It sounded like you were in a good place, but
yeah.
But you're not doing that anymore. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I was in a really good spot with it. And it kind of came as a surprise in January. I got calls saying, "Hey, we're not gonna be able to re-enlist you." And I'm kind of like, what gives? And it boiled down to, without getting into too much detail, some medical stuff that I had to work through with my previous deployment. Things got lost and paperwork got lost, or something happened and a process broke down. I don't know what, but the waiver I needed to be able to re-enlist was never started, let alone processed. So we ended up, I ended up finding out in January that I was done February 1st, military-wise. And then my federal employment ended roughly 2 weeks later. So I went from having, like, I'm suddenly sitting here saying, "Hey, I don't know what you guys are going to do. We got one other guy that he's been back here, but he's not me. And, you guys are going to have to start working with him on things." And it was like, lack of a better way of putting it, it was kicking the knackers.
And there wasn't anything
Yeah,
you could do to fight it, or it didn't cross your mind to fight it. What was, I mean, because once again, it sounded like something just kind of fell out of the sky and said, "Hey, oh, by the way, in a month from now, you're going to be unemployed."
it had been pretty much. It was like, all right, like, my commander pushed as much as he could, and he really couldn't. And the problem was that in the time it would take to process that waiver, um, I would be out either way. I wasn't really told with enough time to start the waiver that it had been denied.
Okay, so let me ask you this question: there were no hints at all that you were going to have an issue.
No,
You had no indication at all.
I had contacted my what are they called? The admin types up front. I contacted them, or CSS. There we go. I contacted CSS and I said, hey, you guys working my reenlistment? It's gonna be up in a couple months. I gave them a little extra time because of COVID. I contacted them in the fall and they're like, oh yeah, we're starting work on it. Okay, cool. And that was the last I'd heard of it until somebody said, hey, it went through med and they're denying it. Like, I don't know. It pretty much, it just happened.
Okay, so I know you said you're not willing to get into it, but just so that I'm clear, was it something that happened during a deployment? Something that happened before deployment? Everything was good then, and it just kind of just fell through?
It was stuff that had come up before my deployment. It's medicine related, and it's in the same vein as say like insulin. It's that the medicine I was on can't be transported because of the schedule it's on, and so it created problems with deployments. Now, before my previous deployment, it was like, okay, cool, we'll push this waiver through and we'll get you onto patches because there's patches I could use. I couldn't use the injections, so I went with patches instead, and they pushed through what normally takes 2 months and 12 days for my deployment, and they were willing to do that because it was a deployment. With the re-enlistment stuff, they weren't willing to do that because they'd already done it once, and apparently. AFCENT's a little more, or CENTCOM's a little more willing to forgive on things than say like AMC or Guard Bureau. Right. They're a little more willing to forgive when they need you there like when you're told you're there. Yeah.
Right.
Whereas not necessarily AMC, but like Guard Bureau, whoever goes through normally for the Guard, they weren't as willing to kind of say, oh, okay, well, let's just make it happen. No, they just straight up said, no, we're going to need a proper waiver.
It sounds like a shit sandwich.
Yep, I took a bite.
So you're handed the shit sandwich. So you're handed
it's all good. It's all good.
A month before you, and a month
not later, even.
You're
unemployed.
Not even a month later, you're unemployed. What happens next?
I had been applying for jobs the whole time. It was a poorly kept secret in my office. I was always looking for a new job because I'm always looking to kind of expand my knowledge base anyway. That had been for about 10 years. So, it wasn't really the application side of things wasn't really an issue because it had been a thing for a while. But February 2nd hit, and it was like, okay, I'm no longer in the military. I'm still a federal employee. But because of the way the billet's written for the federal employee, I got a certain amount of time before I'm done with the federal employee as well. So February 2nd hits, I'm a federal employee and federal civilian employed by the Guard for 2 weeks. Suddenly February 17 hits, I'm straight up unemployed. So I got through, I put in for unemployment. And for the first month or so, it actually worked out really well because my son was on remote school and my wife was still working, and we have plenty of savings set up. So we were fine. And so I call it my month of Saturdays where I was getting up, I was doing stuff around the house, I was cleaning, I had my own little routine. Once my son went back to school, I went through and okay, cool. I suddenly got 8 hours of time during the day. Okay, cool. What can I do around the house? And I just picked up more and more. And then eventually it just kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, like after about a month, it just kind of, I was hoping to get into a groove, and it was the exact opposite. And that combined with the fact that unemployment I had put in for on February 17th still hadn't gone through. Suddenly I'm like, all right, what's going on here? And like, I don't feel like I'm contributing. That's what it boils down to. I'm not bringing any income into the house. My wife can sit here and say, "Oh yeah, you're helping out with the house. You're getting this done and that done," and I'm kind of like, "That's great. It's trashed the next day anyway." I totally feel for my wife, by the way, after that deployment. I totally get how she felt every day afterwards, especially with my son here. But and it just kind of is just this kind of around the toilet bowl feeling. I just kind of started tanking a little bit, and I was like, stop. I kind of stopped cleaning, and like I could see the depression kind of just starting to pick up a little bit.
In your mind, it was boiling. Well, like
I'm not
right
doing
now,
anything.
it makes sense that it was like you weren't making a contribution to like
my household. Yeah,
household.
It's not even necessarily it's not necessarily emasculating. It's not. Oh well, I'm a man. I should be. No. My wife and I are very equal in terms of things when it comes to that, and it was more just in general. I'm not being that equal to her where she's bringing stuff in. It's like suddenly I'm not doing much of anything around here.
Because you're used to working as a team.
Yeah,
I feel like she's picking up quote unquote your slack, if you will. You know, and you felt bad about that.
Yeah, I did, and like on top of it, I wasn't being very social. I was kind of cloistered away at home. I was like, I'm not bringing any money. Why should I be going out and doing anything? Why should I be? So I would go do grocery shopping, and that was about my social interaction for the week. At the kind of lowest part of it, I guess. So that just kind of through like beginning of April, May timeframe, especially with my son back in school on top of it. It was kind of rough mentally. I had been applying. By that point I had 2 interviews. And like, so for the record, I was sticking with federal. I briefly flirted with doing, going on the outside and doing private, but I have 17 years federal experience, so I didn't want to throw that away. So I was trying to stick with federal, and I was applying to anything and everything I could find. If it was remotely related to what I was doing, anything I could throw my application at, I was doing it. But by that point, I had only had probably 10 referrals and 2 interviews. I had 1 interview in January after I had found out, and I had another one in like April, I think, that was related to my degree. And just totally, I blew it on it. That one, I felt I blew it. So yeah, it just felt like it was hit after hit after hit.
Yeah.
Nothing had like worked at all.
So here's my question.
Sure.
Are you employed now?
I am not yet. I have a start date in 2 weeks for a federal position with the USDA thing for me.
Okay. So that means, you're on the up. You're on the uptick.
Yeah.
When you got it, but before we get into the uptick, you already hinted that you were already kind of in a spiral.
Mm-hmm.
How did you break the funk?
I wasn't actively trying to break the funk. I wasn't saying, what can I do to do this? It was very much, I had spent years gaming one way or another. And during that time, I hadn't really done it because I was so focused on doing other things. I hadn't really played much of anything. Suddenly, kids out of the house. I've got a ton of time on my hands. So I go and say, you know what? Okay. I'm like, let me pick something up. And I had played Warcraft for years on and off, very casually, World of Warcraft. And I picked that up and I started playing it. And then I started streaming, and streaming on Twitch, and that didn't really do much of anything, but I was still playing. So I was kind of like, okay, cool. It seems silly, but it was like, okay, cool. I got a goal. I got another goal. Okay, cool. I want to do this next week. And it kind of gave me something to tick off that wasn't related to my house.
Yeah, you were distracting yourself. Gave you a little bit of distraction, a little bit of focus.
Yeah. It gave me a chance to kind of break away a little bit. Okay, let me break away. Let me do something else that's totally unrelated to everything I've been doing. let me get my mind somewhere else for a little bit, because I've always figured out that for me to kind of advance on something, I got to totally take my mind out of something for a little bit and then go back to it. So I found a group. Initially, I found Air Force Gaming. They had just started off, not really my speed. A lot of guys that were active duty. The people that played Warcraft there were very competitive. I'm not. I'm very much the type to go through, play a half hour, 45 minutes a night, and then, okay, cool, I'm going to go. Even when I was playing at my most, I was only playing maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time at most. So Air Force Gaming was a little bit too much, but one day they put up a post saying, "Hey, we're doing a group with MVG," and I was like, "Who the hell's MVG?" I start looking them up, and it's military and veteran gamers, sorry, and it is, to put it nicely, it's a 8,000 member group. They're a 501c3 that works with veterans and with military. Their big thing is, they say, healing through gaming. With healing through gaming, their big aim is to find common ground with other veterans. In my case, it was Warcraft. There were other people that play Warcraft. There's not a ton of them on that server, but I picked up a good steady group of like 5-6 people I'd sit there and talk to, and it fixed that social issue. Some people might sit here and say, oh, okay, you can sit here and play games online with people, and it's not the same as like going out and meeting up with somebody. No, it's not. I'll be the first to admit it's not the same thing. But to have somebody else you can talk to that has that common thread with you, being a veteran, not necessarily Air Force, but having that veteran thread, you can sit there and talk to them in ways that most people won't understand.
I would say that somebody who would say that, what you just explained, they're not in tune per se as to how the world has changed. When I was a section chief there at the end of my enlistment,
mm-hmm.
right, and we used to do our little powwows and give safety briefs on Fridays or whatever,
right,
or long weekends. You want to tell the guys and the gals to make sure you're not spending all your time indoors. Make sure you're not spending all your time by yourself, that sort of stuff, right? Because that's just asking for trouble. But I used to say, go and be social somewhere, mm-hmm. right, with somebody. Find a group of people to hang out with. Well, they're at the end of my enlistment. I would say that I would include. I said, and if gaming is your thing, mm-hmm. and you're talking to people online. At least that's cool too. Mm-hmm. That's cool too. Online communication, online relationships, mm-hmm. and friendly relationships, and so forth. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's completely appropriate.
Right. And so I always compared it to, like, I'll go back a little bit. I really got into it actually at Grand Forks. The first games I played, funny enough, were America's Army and Battlefield 2. And I played with a big group of people that were literally all over the world. I played with people in Europe, and I played people in the US, and depending on what shift I was on, I'd play with the European guys or I'd play with the American guys. And it was just people you could sit there and talk to and BS with. And that continued on during my time in Germany, although it was a lot less in Germany. And then it picked up again, probably it started slowly picking up again probably about 5 years ago, but it really picked up after I was out of a job. And so, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a group of people. And especially being in my position, there's not a lot of people around the area I live in that are veterans. And I was looking for that. I was like, I need somebody that I can talk to like that. And I found that with MVG. And MVG went through and they said, hey, we got this big group of people. We got a lot of veterans. We got some combat veterans. We got some non-combat veterans. We got some military members that are still in. And we got some civilians too that are, here along for the ride. So it's a good group of people. And they broke that first issue I had with just being social in general. And from there, it was, I had somebody to sit there and talk my problems out. That wasn't my wife. I didn't want to burden my wife with the issues I had, because like she was a teacher. or she's a teacher, and she's got enough going on, especially around May, June timeframe. She's got enough stuff going on. So I was like, all right, cool. And I kind of just started talking to those people, and it helped me out. And I was like, all right, well, it's funny enough because I was talking to somebody that on the server, and they said, hey, it doesn't sound like you got a lot of GIS experience, but it sounds like you're more like a business analyst. What you do, you could transfer that over to being a business analyst. That's where I started looking. I was like, you know what? I'm like giggles. I'm like, let me just look around. I started looking private at first, but position came up as a management and program analyst on USA Jobs, and it was 200 applications nationwide for 8 positions, and I applied for it. It closed. It opened. I applied for it that day. It closed the next day, and got a phone call, got an interview, and got notified about 3 weeks later. I was tentatively selected, and then 2 weeks ago, I got the final offer on it, and yeah, I'm just waiting to start now.
Awesome, dude. That's
awesome.
Awesome.
They had to go through it. They had to line everything up with leave and everything else. They said, hey, how does August 16th sound? I'm kind of sitting there thinking, I'm like, August 2nd would have been a lot better. But yeah, 16th sounds great.
But that's cool, though. You were turned on to that while you were in the
community. It was entirely outside of the box, yeah. It was because the entire time I had been looking at GIS developers, analysts, technicians. On the other hand, tapping more into my experience, I had been looking at just in planning in general. I have some Python experience. I was looking at Python. None of it really hashed out to what I could fit into. And then somebody said, hey, why not a business analyst? And I looked into it, and it was very it was shifting numbers. Like, it wasn't necessarily aircraft numbers. It was budgets, or it was production, or it was something like that. But it was very simple. It was metrics. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which I didn't have exact experience with metrics, but I have experience with statistics. So it wasn't that hard to sit there and shift it over.
That's cool, dude. That is totally awesome. And isn't it funny, God works in mysterious ways, right? And you found this community, nothing, or it seemed like nothing.
Yeah.
You fell into this community just kind of by chance. It almost sounds like your whole life, dude.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's kind of
I keep feeling like the term that comes to my head is failing upward.
That's an excellent failing upward. I liked it when I first heard it. Now maybe not so much, but it makes sense.
I mean,
falling upstairs, right? It happens.
So my thing is that I'll get into better positions and I'll learn, and it's like, oh, here's this totally separate thing that's even better. And I'm like, sure, why not? And yeah, that's pretty much what's happened.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but yeah, I don't even remember who told me. I feel bad because the person that mentioned to me, I totally forgot who told me about it on our server, and I'm like, dude, I want to thank them, but I don't remember who it was. I know it was a guy in the army, which doesn't help because there's 1,000 dudes in the army on the server. So
he's an angel.
Yeah. It was definitely it came out of nowhere, and I was like, all right, yeah, and it worked out.
What you experienced basically is what this podcast is all about, right? It's pointing out and identifying that most every military veteran has difficulty transitioning, right? They experience their transitioning woes. They experience transitioning woes in their own way, but just about everybody experiences difficulty transitioning. It's not easy.
Right.
But on top of that, it seems like just as many people who experience those difficult transitions, when they find a veteran community to surround themselves with, things just kind of seem to work out and get better. And I believe it's because we are the best people to help each other out. There's fewer people in the country qualified to help veterans, other than just other veterans. We just do better when we're around each other. You know what? If you don't mind,
sure.
You've mentioned it a couple of times. What degree do you have? What's your degree in?
So my degree is in GIS. It's Geographic Information Science. The way I've always told people, it's a combination of cartography, data analysis, and programming, kind of all put together. So we deal mainly with producing maps. That's what our end product generally is mapping. Um, but what we do is we use programming such as Python and R to run calculations on a set of numbers, and the set of numbers could be anything. A lot of the stuff I was running on in college was census data, and you're talking thousands of rows of data, thousands of columns of data. You're using these programming languages, Python, R, whatever else you can really get your hands on, and then making it into something you can analyze. And then you're taking that data analysis and you're kind of turning that into something that is viewable in the form generally of a map. You see these maps of like election shifts, for example. That's a very simple, basic GIS function, is just going through and running through and say, okay, we can go through and compare this year with this year, and then create a map. And
You create are those the people? Are you the people that create those heat maps?
yeah, actually, yeah. Heat maps are something as well. If you're talking something like but what looks kind of like an elevation map, almost like a red to green elevation map. Yeah,
Yeah,
we can.
those things are cool. What got you into that? What got you into that? Is it the numbers?
The numbers.
With your GIS degree, like, okay, you just picked up this job with the USDA. Is there still a desire to use the degree?
Oh yeah.
Now?
Yeah.
And so, like, how do you plan on using it? Like, do you have anything in place as far as like a plan goes as to how you're going to use that, or is it you're just kind of playing it by ear?
I'm kind of playing it by ear. It's a little column A, a little column B. Pretty much, I do have a long-term plan that involves not living where I am currently,
Which is
New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey right now. I'm about
no,
I'm about halfway between Philly and Atlantic City, so I get to drive by the link every time I go to the airport. But I'm about halfway between Philly and Atlantic City, and so the long-term goal is moving out west or moving up to Canada. I'm lucky enough to have that privilege with my wife because she's a dual citizen. But I'm looking at going through and kind of using my degree then, because GIS, there's kind of a dearth of jobs doing GIS out here. So it's going to be more of okay, let me take this time to build up a portfolio to say, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. Let me go through, and it's a matter of just finding what projects I'd like to do in terms of what I want to show any prospective employers in the future.
Well, I wish you luck, man. I wish you luck. It sounds like a really interesting degree, and nobody wants to have spent the time and the money to earn a degree you can't use, right? Even though it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I totally get it. I've heard plenty of people where it's like, yeah, I'm doing this, and my degree is in something totally unrelated.
Look, it does happen all the time, but you know what? In my experience, in my experience, or at least in my observations, it's not always a bad thing. And more times than not, I've seen people with college experience use their degree less times, but still fall into something that works for them, thanks to their college experience. Right. So, a lot of people knock college. I know there's this debate between college and trades and trade schools, which I don't take a side either way, because whatever gives a young person, especially, puts them on a path to be self-sufficient and independent. You do whatever you got to do, right? If college is your thing and you have an opportunity, do that. Trades, if the trades are an opportunity and you have an opportunity to do that. Absolutely. But what I tell young people is that even if you don't use your degree, which you should try to at least, there are so many successful people who there's a lot of successful people in this world who became successes due to their college experience, meaning they were in college doing their thing, and they found something in that period of time that said, hey, I could do this for the rest of my life. And it's completely unrelated to the education path that they were on. So anyway, I'm just saying, it's still kind of cool. that you have that degree, but it's also cool that you're just on this journey, right? And it seems to be working for you, and I'm happy for you. It does sound like you had a rough patch, but
Yeah.
looks like you got through it thanks to the MVG folks. Are there any plugs that you can do for MVG that maybe we could share for?
Yeah, actually. So they have a Discord server. If you don't know what Discord is kind of, if you know what Slack is.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but go ahead.
So Discord is it started life as kind of a gaming communication platform, but it's expanded to so much more in terms of like you can have voice channels, you can stream, you can stream what you screen share, you have text channels. It's a really good communication suite. But they have a specific link. It's discord.gg/military. That's their Discord server. So their website is MVG, as in Mike Victor Golf, charity.org. That's their actual website. If you didn't catch the Discord link before, it's on there. Like I said, it's a group of 8,000 people on there. I'm not going to say 8,000 people are active, but you've got 8,000 people there that you're bound to come across one or two people that have had a similar experience to what you've dealt with.
I'm happy that you found this community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm happy you found this community, and it just, once again, it goes to show you that veterans just connect in a certain way. We just connect in a certain way, and it doesn't matter the branch of service. It doesn't matter, the job, the career field. It's really kind of fantastic. If you're a veteran, find other veterans.
Yep.
It will help. It will help. And it's something about veterans, like maybe not all of them are geared to problem solve your issue, right? But we are conditioned to be problem solvers. So more times than not, you'll find somebody who wants to help.
There's a lot of guys there that have been through worse experiences, and they'll sit here and say, okay, this is nothing. Let's kind of talk this through. Let's go through. I can tell you for a fact this isn't going to be anything in the long run. Let's kind of just walk this through step by step. And there's people there that'll do that.
Well, there you go, man. Thanks for sharing that with us and sharing that group with us. We'll see if we can't point anybody in their direction. Maybe they can get a few more followers, or a few more users, or whatever. A lot more users, a few more streamers. The big thing they do is stream on Twitch a lot. Whatever the jargon or vernacular is that is appropriate for this situation.
So for what it's worth, yeah, it is users. But you do have a lot of people that stream on Twitch. They stream whatever game they're playing. They're streamers. There's a lot of people on there to do that, and you'll see you'll see just the MVG guy just raid into somebody's channel and just bump up their viewers. It hits you a little bit differently than something, a few other things. So
let me ask you this: if there was a piece of advice that you would give anybody who was listening, a message, a takeaway, what would it be? I like to ask this question by surprise, because you get an honest, genuine answer. It's always like honest, genuine, organic answer. So if there was a piece of advice that you could give anybody about anything, what would it be?
It'll work out. That's honestly, there's no way to really put that into a box. It'll work out. It'll be okay. Everything will be okay in the long run. That's one thing my wife told me. She's like, we'll be fine in the long run. We'll be okay, and we'll get through it. It was constantly that. If I sit here, no, we're not. Yeah, we are. We're doing just fine. We're kind of at the end of just fine right now, waiting to start this job. But yeah,
keep pushing forward, man. You keep pushing forward.
Everything will be okay. Yeah. If you're going through hell, keep going.
I want to say thank you to my guest, William Ryan, Air Force veteran William Ryan, for being on the podcast today. As we all heard, Will had some ups and downs and some transitional woes. Will learned kind of the hard way, as once again, many veterans learn, that the military isn't a perfect business. As a result, Will found himself in a period of uncertainty, but he did, however, find some help in the form of a gaming community, the MVG. And in this gaming community, he was able to prove the point that I try to make, that veterans just are the best medicine for veterans. If you're going through a difficult period in your own life, reach out to a veteran community. There are people who are willing and ready to help. There are people who are willing and ready to help. As scary as it may be, or as awkward as it may feel to reach out for help, I guarantee you it's going to be okay and you will not be disappointed. So, thank you again, Will Ryan, for being on the Veterans Lounge podcast. If you like this episode and you want to hear future episodes, you can find the Veterans Lounge podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are played. Please subscribe and share it with your friends and your family veterans. Maybe they might be interested in being a guest, or maybe you might be interested in being a guest on the Veterans Lounge podcast. I would love to hear your story. I believe that every veteran has something worthwhile and something worth sharing for the rest of the veteran community. If you're watching on YouTube and you liked what you saw, please like, share, subscribe, click the bell to hear future notifications whenever episodes come out. I'm always looking for feedback. Please provide some feedback. Constructive criticism is preferred. However, I guess if you got to be a jerk, you got to be a jerk. I don't know. Those people are out there, and I'm not gonna hide myself from them. But constructive criticism, feedback is always welcome, always appreciated. Otherwise, once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching the Veterans Lounge podcast. Thank you again to Will Ryan for being a guest on the podcast. I will talk to you again very soon. Take care. God bless. If you would like to be a guest on the Veterans Lounge podcast, go to veteransnexus.org/podcast to learn how. The Veterans Lounge podcast is a project produced in association with the Veterans Nexus Foundation, where they put veterans first and provide opportunities for vets to meet their higher education goals and also find employment as they transition back into civilian life. If you'd like to learn more about Veterans Nexus, visit veteransnexus.org.